A Captain and a Madman by RazielZonoran. Chapter 10. Relativity. You know, welcome to the relativity, would generally suggest one act a bit more welcoming. The doctor was seated in a cold, uncomfortable metal chair, in front of an equally cold-looking table, in a small room 2 decks below the bridge. The walls were featureless, smooth white, and though there were no visible cameras or sensors, the Time Lord knew that he was likely being watched. A pair of security guards flanked the only exit, and just across the table, Captain Duquesne sat in what looked like a far more comfortable chair, his head tilted slightly. "Well, you'll have to excuse the accommodations," Duquesne replied, frowning slightly as he considered the sonic screwdriver in his hand. Security had removed it from the doctor after a brief search, the device far easier to find given the form-fitting, outdated Starfleet science uniform he still wore. "But considering what we've learned about you, it was decided that we could take no risks." "Ah, read up on me, have you?" the doctor said, brow lifting and looking just a bit smug. "Interesting tale." "Yes, a very, very entertaining tale." Something about the emphasis on that last word drew a bit of curiosity from the Time Lord, but Duquesne didn't seem inclined to elaborate yet. "How did you lot track me, anyway? Does Picard know about this?" "Oh, we're over 500 years from Picard," Duquesne replied, "and for what it's worth, he didn't betray you, at least not consciously. A personal log he made, 3 weeks after your initial encounter, just happened to mention that you'd told him you were going to search another Enterprise. Slip of the tongue, really, but that log, along with hundreds of others from the Enterprise crew, became public domain about 50 years after Picard's death. Our analysts happened to link the mention with a very brief, very cryptic report made by Commander Spock of the original Enterprise, mentioning he'd been visited by a John Smith. I don't suppose that's your real name." "No," the doctor replied, waving a hand slightly. "Just a quick little alias to get me around without raising too many questions." "What is, then?" Duquesne leaned forward in his seat, looking far less friendly. "Your name, I mean." "Well, you can just call me the doctor." The captain smiled humorlessly. "No, seriously. I think we can just be honest here, one time traveler to another. We both know you're not the doctor." The doctor's brow furrowed just a little, his own amusement replaced with just a little bit of confusion. "I'm afraid I don't quite understand. I thought you'd done your research." "Oh, I have," Duquesne replied. "Not just myself. Learning more about the time traveler called only, the Doctor, was actually a prime goal for the Temporal Agency upon its inception. Finding you, learning more about you, your methods, your technology, your impact on our history. Ever since your escape from Picard's Enterprise, Starfleet had a perpetual interest in you, but one that was rather difficult to tend to. Given time travel mechanics at the time were quite clumsy and somewhat inaccurate, we didn't have the means to observe or investigate without risking contamination to the timeline. As soon as we did, rest assured, we threw all available resources into it. I personally went on several fact-finding missions, in my younger years." "Oh, good for you bunch," the doctor replied, and though his tone was jovial, he was admittedly more than a little curious. "And what did you learn on your book report?" Duquesne climbed to his feet and began to pace the room, quite casually, hands folding behind his back. "As you know," the captain began, "there are numerous stories of a doctor across 100 different worlds. Most of these are snippets, little more than myths and legends. But they're there. What's also on file are the historical records you were examining, detailing incidents where some mystery man saves the day. And I'll confess, when our own analysts looked at them, 20 years ago, there were signs of possible involvement from a higher alien intelligence. It was then that our directive was made, a simple mission, to find the doctor, and bring him in for an open discussion. So we went back," he continued, "further and further, to each incident we'd found on record, each hint that the doctor had been there for a visit. Each time, our operatives found nothing. No dilemma, no danger, and certainly no time-hopping hero coming to save the day. Reports that were filed, stories that were told, on hundreds of worlds, seem to have simply come from nowhere. Rumors. We never met anyone matching your description, or really anyone who seemed atypical of the population, even when we went to the specific time and place of a reported incident. You're the first encounter with any such doctor we've ever had, though I assure you, we've devoted a lot of time to finding him." Well, the doctor replied, a small smirk hiding his growing unease. You don't sincerely think that you'd be able to simply nab him, do you? Lifting a brow, Duquesne didn't respond, simply gesturing to the Time Lord seated in front of him. That doesn't count. The doctor scoffed, arms crossing over his chest. I'm rather out of my element here. If this were my universe, I'd be running temporal circles around you lot, and probably be stealing your lunch money as well. For lunch. In any case, I don't see what this has to do with anything. What I am saying, Duquesne replied calmly, is that there is no doctor. No Time Lords. No Gallifreyan technology, or any of these other things you spoke of during your visit to the Enterprise. There are stories, yes. Legends, tales, and as I said, even reports that were supposedly historical in nature, but we've examined hundreds of them, and haven't found any evidence that they ever happened. Not on Earth, not anywhere. So, would you like to hear my theory? Not particularly. My theory, the captain continued, utterly ignoring the doctor's snide comment, is that you're not who you've claimed you are. You're just some unusually clever fellow with a time machine, who decided to pay a visit to a 24th century ship, and dazzle them with your brilliance. You found stories on a handful of planets of this, doctor, figure, and decided to adopt the persona as your own. The Enterprise D crew did describe you as incredibly advanced, but I think that in this time frame, here and now, you're nothing too special. Is your ship bigger on the inside than the outside? The doctor countered, brow lifted. Duquesne smiled a little at that, but didn't seem convinced. They had holodeck technology even in the 24th century. Duquesne's hands spread slightly. The senses can be fooled pretty easily. The mind, too, everything Picard reported during his captivity, could have been implanted memories. Your little stunt with the Alcharan star seemed quite impressive, unless you knew what would happen in advance, and therefore had all the time you needed to devise a solution. We're not exactly thrilled with your interference there, either. It took quite a bit of effort to restore the timeline after you'd intruded in it. Restore the timeline? What do you? The doctor paused for a long moment, then his eyes widened, just a little. You couldn't have. Rogue asteroid, Duquesne replied. Completely destroyed the colony 1 week later, before anyone on it could depart. Safer than trying to interfere with the Enterprises in your initial rescue. Fortunately, corrections of that nature are assigned to different ships altogether. It's not a duty I would have savored. The doctor fell silent at that, eyes flitting from side to side, his jaw tightening and entire body tensing almost painfully. So really, Duquesne continued, considering his PADD, the only concrete feats you've managed were to overcome a computer system that, by our standards, is antiquated, and time travel, which, as you see, we can do as well. I suppose, if you can call it that, the doctor replied distractedly, drawing in a deep, shuddering breath as he tried to fall back on his humor. I mean, a 2-year-old careens around the living room and manages to avoid crashing into most of the furniture, and we call that walking. Very funny, Duquesne replied. Now, who are you really? Haven't you been listening? The Time Lord gave a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm the doctor. If you're going to stick to this lunatic fairy tale, then. Bridge to Captain Duquesne. Stifling a sigh, Duquesne leaned back, head tilting upwards just slightly. Duquesne here, go ahead. Captain, Operative Manning has contacted us from Kirk's Enterprise. He reports that he cannot access the interior of the subject's ship, and is requesting instructions. Damn. Duquesne paused for just a moment. Can we beam the entire thing here? We can't seem to get a lock on it. Very strange readings coming from it, sir. Stand by. Keep the temporal shielding up. Duquesne out. Fox in the henhouse. The doctor asked with mock concern, brow lifted. Looks like, Duquesne said quietly. It seems you've left a mess back where we picked you up. Your ship is going to be discovered by the original Enterprise crew, sooner or later. By now, as far as the timeline outside this ship's temporal shielding is concerned, they already have. Eventually, the Starfleet back then would find a way in, and that technology could advance the Federation beyond a point it's ready to reach, to say nothing for the risks if her enemies found a way to get it as well. So, are you going to help us fix the mess you've made of the timeline? The doctor laughed. Flat out, In Duquesne's face, his own face reddening with forced mirth as the pair of security guards shifted restlessly, not exactly pleased with his reaction. Duquesne, for his part, just sat there, waiting for the outburst to subside, his arms crossed over his chest. "Oh, this is rich," the doctor chortled, leaning forward in his seat, eyes gleaming like chips of ice. "I didn't create the mess, you did. When you brought me here, you nits. I was just on my way out, perfectly prepared to meander on my merry way with none the wiser aboard that ship except for two lads who was perfectly happy to let me meander merrily. Then you lot waylay me and bring me to entirely the wrong time period, leaving the highly advanced and extremely mysterious TARDIS parked in their cargo bay. And now you're here, blaming me for it with all the narrow-minded, self-centered egotism of—" "I think I get the point," Duquesne interjected, lifting a hand. "I don't care." The doctor's voice was a bellow as he leapt to his feet, and the pair of guards raised their phasers, holding their fire only at Duquesne's gesture. "I'm not done talking," the Time Lord snapped, disgust curling at his lip. "Your people wipe out an entire colony, murder every man, woman and child on it for the sake of preserving the timeline, and then manage to bugger it up yourselves. You accuse me of risking the integrity of your past, but if the human race has reached the point where it can callously, cravenly kill off its own people for some misplaced sense of temporal stagnation, then it seems to be your past could use some more bloody tampering." Duquesne didn't respond, he didn't speak at all, but he didn't flinch from the doctor's anger, didn't get to his feet. He just watched the captive quietly, evenly, not thinking to explain himself, or justify the actions of his people. After a long silence had passed between them, he said a single word. "Done." Scowling darkly, the doctor flopped onto his seat again. "Quite. All right," Duquesne said. "What would it take to secure your help in getting your ship out of there?" "Returning me to the Enterprise would be a very good start," the doctor replied, head tilted. "I'm the only one who can access the TARDIS, and so if you want to get in, you'll just have to bring me along for it." "I'm not about to fall for that," Duquesne replied, smirking just a little. "And if you're as brilliant as you claim, then we both know you must have something planned for just this eventuality. A key under the mat, some sort of override, we can certainly negotiate if there is. Or you can spend a few months in the brig. The Relativity has enough supplies and power reserves to last years, even with temporal shielding raised." The Time Lord squirmed in his seat just a little, eyes slipping away from Duquesne, his thoughts all but printed across his face. While on the one hand, he probably would have liked nothing more than to punt the captain out an airlock, on the other, he wasn't exactly thrilled with the prospect of spending too long in confinement. With every passing moment, the defiance in his shoulders seemed to subside, his head bowing lower and lower, the anger in his eyes cooling and turning into quiet consideration. "Fine." Head tilting, Duquesne leaned forward a little. "Sorry, what was that?" "Damn you, I said fine," the doctor snapped, not meeting Duquesne's eyes. "There is a way." A slow smile spread across Duquesne's face, one of quiet satisfaction. "Tell me." "My sonic screwdriver." Frowning slightly, the captain lifted the metallic wand slightly, brow lifting. "Yes, that." Sighing a little, shoulders slumping, the Time Lord explained, "A while back I was stranded in the past without access to the TARDIS. Long story. You don't care, but the point is I made sure to develop a recall link, which I of course included in the screwdriver. Much like anyone with the proper number can call it from any point in time, anyone with the proper frequency can summon it from any point in time. Well, that's how it was supposed to work, anyway." "Supposed to?" "Well." The doctor sounded almost embarrassed. "There have been some issues with the sonic not quite having the range to reach the TARDIS from any more than 100 feet, or 100 days. However, since you have a lad on the original Enterprise, it would be a simple matter to match the sonic's transmission through your link with him. The TARDIS, gorgeous thing that she is, has no such range issues, and would trace the transmission back to your ship, and come here in a flash of brilliance." Duquesne considered the doctor for a long moment, as if trying to find any sign of deception, but the Time Lord didn't even meet his gaze, his eyes lowered and shoulders slumped. "All right," the captain finally, nodding and offering him the screwdriver. "I'll go open a channel, and you can call your ship here." "Well, I have conditions," the doctor replied irritably, eyes narrowed as they flickered back up. The captain snorted slightly, hardly surprised. "All right. Tell me." From what I can see of you lot, came the muttered reply, you're utterly obsessed with keeping your timeline neat and tidy. Therefore, the less time travelers are about, the better. And so you are better off if I'm not here, in this universe, and I assure you, I am trying very hard not to be here. That's the entire reason I'm scurrying about like this. So, if I retrieve the TARDIS from the original Enterprise's timeframe, and bring it here, and if I color only in the lines you so dearly want to provide me, then I ask only that you help me find a way to return to my own reality. Your accumulated knowledge, resources, if we work together, the problem can rather handily vanish on its own. Duquesne's lips thinned as he considered it, fingers drumming on the desk for several long moments, and then, finally, he nodded. All right, I still think you're lying through your teeth about who you are, but I suppose the least I can do is give you a chance to prove yourself. Wonderful. The Time Lord hopped to his feet, startling the guards into brandishing their phasers a bit more excitedly. Well, we'll need more room than this. To your bridge. Dash 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 dash. Only a couple of minutes later, they stood on the Relativity's main bridge, the same place that the doctor had initially been brought on his arrival. At Duquesne's gesture, all of the guards that had been keeping an eye on the doctor moved away, shifting to form a semicircle about 10 feet away, standing between the Time Lord and the temporal transporter. Clearly, the captain was half expecting the Time Lord to make a break for it, but the doctor's face had only resignation on it as he reached his hand out to the captain. Right then, hand it over. You do realize, Duquesne said quietly, keeping the screwdriver just out of reach at first, that if the lights so much as flicker when you use this thing, or if you even twitch towards that temporal transporter, there are a half-dozen very big, burly security personnel ready to tackle you to the carpet. Same if that blue box appears and you reach for the door handle. Oh, don't be daft, the doctor replied, looking quite innocent as he reached out, pointedly snatching his device away and examining it minutely to make sure they hadn't scratched it. You lot are so very advanced and knowledgeable, after all, I'm sure you have nothing to worry about. Sighing, Duquesne turned to one of his junior officers. Lieutenant Kale, open a channel to Operative Manning. Nodding, the younger officer turned her attention back to her console, tapping in a command sequence. Channel open. Operative, the captain said, glancing once more at the doctor. We're about to try something on our end. Keep an eye on the subject's ship, alert us to any change. Aye, sir, standing by. Duquesne once more glanced to the doctor, gesturing for him to begin. All right, the Time Lord murmured, lifting the screwdriver and pointing it towards a spot midway between him and the security personnel, plenty of room for the TARDIS. The device buzzed to life, the pitch rising higher and higher with each moment. I'm piggybacking your transmission, linking to the TARDIS, and uploading the recall sequence, just give it a moment to compensate for temporal lag, and… Captain. The voice on the other end was mingled with the whirring of the TARDIS's departure. The subject's ship appears to be fading away, I think it's working. Of course it is, the doctor drawled. Give it a few moments to reach us, Captain, and I'll park it right on your front lawn. Duquesne, indeed, the entire bridge crew, turned towards the spot the doctor had indicated, waiting quite patiently, and a grin did cross many of their faces when they heard that same whirring sound, this time on the bridge itself. But as the seconds ticked by, there was no sign of the doctor's blue box, and indeed it didn't look like it would be materializing anytime soon. Turning to ask the doctor what was taking so long, Duquesne's words died in his throat as he realized that the TARDIS was, indeed, materializing. More specifically, the TARDIS was materializing around the doctor. One of the security guards lunged, but even half-formed, the TARDIS, walls were solid enough to block the man's hands from getting at the Time Lord. Just before the TARDIS materialized completely, the doctor lifted his hand to wave goodbye, smirking and mouthing just two words. I lied. A split second later, he vanished from sight, leaving only the imposing blue box in his place. Two of the security guards hurled against the door, pulling, pushing, throwing themselves against it and, when that failed, stepping back and drawing their phasers, setting them to maximum. Taking firing positions, they dropped to one knee and lifted their weapons, fully intent on blasting their way inside. No! Duquesne shouted, stopping the guards in their tracks. We can't risk firing a high-intensity phaser blast this close to the temporal transporter. One stray shot could blow half the ship apart. Try and penetrate the interior with sensors instead. Compensate for the spatial distortions and get me a set of coordinates. We'll get a boarding party aboard before this bastard runs for it, and... Captain. Lieutenant Kale now, her voice alarmed, and more than a little incredulous. He's bypassing our security encryption and getting into our systems. Our databanks are being downloaded. I'm attempting to lock him out, but nothing seems to be. Damn it. Duquesne dropped his original thought, paling as he moved to hunch over her console with her fingers dancing across the controls. Start a complete system reboot, see if that slows him down, and dump all non-essential files, full burn procedure. Trying, sir, no response from Conter. And then, suddenly, every monitor on every deck throughout the ship, including those on the brig, flickered and shut off their various analysis and displays. Instead, they showed 2 more words. Nothing special. Duquesne's jaw dropped. Son of a. The power went out. Lighting, computer monitors, propulsion, everything except for life support shut down all at once, the normal background hum of the Relativity's operating systems fading into an unnerving silence. There was a brief scuffle as crewmen throughout it moved to find flashlights and tricorders, and then, on the bridge, a whirring howl as the TARDIS time rotor began to operate again, breaking the darkness with the pulsing, ghostly light atop the blue box as each flash caused it to fade more and more. Within moments, it was gone, leaving a handful of very confused, very angry Starfleet officers behind.